We've got one copy of the DL-44 Heavy Blaster Pistol. I'd like to put two in, but I haven't figured out what to cut yet. It's got ambush, so it helps with Han, and gives you a little die removal, although generally that doesn't have too much of an effect. I'm not a big fan of the two blank sides, but you can't argue with 8 damage on the faces of the dice, just over 3 faces. I put in 2 copies of Second Chance. A lot of people run this with Jakku or the Starship Graveyard. I just run it with the Rebel War Room and use it to provide Han a second life if he needs it. Generally having 2 of these is just so I can be sure that I get one at some point in the game to keep Han alive. So on the left side of the board, we've only got 2 cards with actual ambush, but there are 6, 7 yellow upgrades that can be given ambush with our 1 support, which is Infamous. You might want to make this a 2 copy if you plan on really relying on Han's shields, but without things like riposte and other shield manipulation from the blue side, the shields don't become as important. They're just some extra bonuses provided by Han. The good thing about including red characters is we do get a lot of ambush cards. We could include something like It's a Trap in here, which has ambush, and you could change these die and these die onto their ranged faces if you had an opponent with a ranged deck. But without a lot of red dice, I didn't include it. I did include 2 copies of Hit and Run. So this will let us activate Leia and immediately follow it up by activating Han or resolving one of her dice, which can be really powerful. And at the same time, it's a 0-cost event that'll provide Han a shield. There's 2 copies of Unpredictable. Again, a 0-cost event that'll provide Han a shield and it'll reroll a die. I put in 2 copies of Logistics. I like to get my expensive upgrades out pretty quickly, and Logistics helps with that a lot. Han's got 2 sides that show a resource, so there's a pretty good chance that in the first couple turns you'll roll a resource at least once, and by spotting Leia you can double the effectiveness of it. So that can be a big deal. There's 2 copies of Field Medic. I still feel this card is really good even though it's reactive, especially in a deck with only 2 characters. Yeah, you have 21 health, and if you can heal 2 of that health, you've healed 20% of this guy's health. That's a large chunk. For die removal, I've got, I guess, 5 cards in here. I've got 2 copies of Electroshock, which is pretty standard in yellow decks. This doesn't help against those 3 damage faces on Vader and Grievous, or Han's own 3 damage face, but it's really powerful at removing special abilities and such. You can make it an ambush ability again with Infamous, so this card becomes really powerful. I always put 1 copy of Disarm in. If this is a villain deck, you'd probably have Confiscation too, but just to be able to remove that holocron for pretty cheap, or remove some other nasty weapon like a Luke's lightsaber or something, this can be a pretty niche card. Other die removal card is 2 copies of Shoot First. This one has ambush already, so you don't even need Infamous to get it to work. But resolve one of your yellow die showing a range damage, so probably one of Han's dice, but it could also be from this blaster pistol. You won't be able to resolve this one on its own, so it won't work with Jetpack. That might be one good reason to include a second one of these. Anyway, resolve that die showing its range damage, and then remove an opponent's die showing range damage. So we've got some anti-melee and some anti-ranged in our deck. Lots of die removal for being a non-blue deck, so that's pretty good. I have 1 copy of Leadership. I'd like to make it 2, but to fit 30 cards, we only have 1. We could swap these and include 1 copy of Han and 2 copies of Leia. Han will almost always be a target right away because they want to burn through his shields and then just take him down. So that may be a good option to switch later, but for now we have 1 copy of Leia, so we include this copy of Leadership, because if you can activate Han when he's souped up with a couple of guns twice just by exhausting your Leia, that can be a big deal. So we'll group this deck up, flip it over, and do a couple of test draws here. So we've got Han, Leia, and a Rebel War Room. Put our dice up there. And yeah, we'll shuffle the deck, draw our 5 cards. So here we've got some pretty interesting examples. This is a pretty good example since there's 5 1-cost upgrades. We got 2 upgrades that we could play that first turn just for our 2 resources. So that's pretty powerful. We also have an ambush upgrade that we could play on Han and then activate him right away, which could be pretty powerful. Second Chance is pretty expensive, so we probably wouldn't keep that in our mulligan. And Shoot First would depend on what your opponent has. You may or may not keep that, but I'd probably set myself up something like this. And then I'll shuffle again and draw 2. I drew shoot first back, but I also drew a field medic, so I can get that healing off right away before the damage disappears. So yeah, we'll see how our battlefield taking abilities are. You can see Leia's got 2/2 numeral faces and 3/1 numerals. Han's got a 2, a 3, and a 2, and 2 1s, so he's pretty good at taking battlefields like Grievous was, but we only have 3 dice, so it could be a little tricky against 4 dice decks. So, you know, our first roll we get 3. It's a pretty low to average number, I'd say. 3 seems like a pretty reliable number, getting 1 on each die. Or even worse, too, so not going to be super powerful at taking your battlefield. The good news is almost all battlefields can be used to an advantage in this deck. You can get more shields with Echo Base. You can reduce the cost of those 3-cost upgrades to 2-cost upgrades right away. So it might be one thing to keep in mind when you're mulliganing, that there's a good chance you won't earn your base. So if you see someone else has the base out there that reduces the cost of an upgrade by 1 and play it from hand, you might consider keeping one of those 3-cost upgrades for your early turns. If you do, by chance, lose the battlefield and get to pick who to put shields on, I recommend putting them on Leia. Han's going to have a ton of free shields already, so you may as well give Leia a little bit of extra protection. That or split it, make them decide who they want to target. So yeah, we'll do one more mulligan hand. Maybe 2 more, we'll see. So here's a really powerful start again. I might not even mulligan anything from this. So we've got a hit and run, so very first turn we could activate Leia and resolve her die, or play a holdout blaster, activate Leia, resolve her die. We can even try that here in a minute. Again, depending on what your enemy has, I may or may not keep shoot first. With this hand, I'd probably get rid of field medic, because I want to be pretty aggressive. Oops, not search. So we'll shuffle and draw 2. We get a data pad, and for some reason we always get our shoot first back. Yeah, so with this hand you could do something like play your holdout blaster. No, I don't have a play field set up, so we have to search holdout blaster. But yeah, we'd probably play it on Han. It'll appear soon, I hope. There's comlink, we must be getting close. There we go. Yeah, so play our hold up blaster on Han, that'll provide him a shield. We could use hit and run, provide another shield to Han, and that would activate Leia. And then you could activate Han with your extra action. And before your opponent even goes, you could have played your entire turn other than resolving your dice. And that'll leave you vulnerable to things like flank, but it'll mean you really get to claim. Well, that was a pretty awful roll. So we'd probably discard the reroll and see if we can get some damage through this turn. Yeah, so we've got a 2, a 3, a 1, and a +2. So you could hit for 5 right there, or you could hunt for a resource and hit for even more. So pretty good setup right there. I'll put this over here in case we decide to play one more. We'll group up and shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Alright, so this will be our last test mulligan. We've got hit and run again a great keep. Hunker down early, another great keep. Infiltrate, I consider keeping. We'll probably toss these two. Can't afford that rifle the first turn, and we don't want to spend too much time controlling them. That's for better later. Alright, so not an ideal opening hand, but we could still do something like play Infiltrate on Han, or activate Leia, play Infiltrate on Han. We can throw Hunker Down out there right away and start building up shields. If you get 3 shields, it's hard to get melee through for the first couple turns, so you can really take advantage of that. So Anyway, hope to use this deck a couple times this week and record some video for you guys. I hope you'll find it interesting and test it out. All right, thanks everybody.